The galaxy had known peace for 10,000 years, but it was not the peace of friendship. It was the peace of fear. 5 great powers ruled everything. They called themselves the Ascendancy. Every other species in the known universe bowed to them. Those who refused were destroyed. It was simple. It was absolute. The Vormathi were beings of pure energy. They could think a star into destruction. The Kelthrans controlled gravity itself and could crush planets like paper. The Ithros Collective was a single mind spread across billions of bodies, thinking faster than any computer. The Dralksan were warriors whose skin was harder than the cores of dead stars, and the Luminarchs could step between dimensions as easily as walking through a door. Together, they were unstoppable. At least that's what everyone believed. High Prelate Ralmoth floated in the council chamber, his form flickering with barely contained power. He was ancient even by Vormathi standards. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had personally ordered the extinction of 63 species who dared to resist. The censors must be wrong, he said, his voice echoing through the minds of the other council members. The Kelthran representative, a massive being that bent light around its form, disagreed. The readings are confirmed. A new species. Advanced technology. They appeared in less than 1,000 cycles. Impossible, Ralmoth insisted. No species develops that quickly without guidance. Without conquest, but the readings didn't lie. Somewhere in an unmapped region of space, someone new had built ships that could cross the stars. Someone who had never asked the Ascendancy for permission. The decision was unanimous. They would investigate. They would offer the standard choice, submit or die. It had always worked before. Commander Do Yun sat in the captain's chair of the Mugunghwa, watching the stars stream past. He was young for a ship commander, only 35, but he had trained his entire life for this moment. First contact. Beside him, Ambassador Yunji reviewed her notes one more time. She had studied every known alien language, every form of communication humanity had ever encountered. She knew 7,000 ways to say hello. But she had never actually met an alien before. No human had. Nervous? Do-hyun asked. Yunji smiled. Terrified, you? The same. Their mission was simple, find out if humanity was alone in the universe. The answer came faster than they expected. The ship's alarm screamed. 20 vessels materialized around them, each one the size of a small moon. They hadn't seen them coming. One moment, empty space. The next, a fleet. This is the Ascendancy Enforcement Wing. A voice boomed through every speaker on the ship. It spoke perfect Korean, though it had never heard the language before. You will follow us. Resistance will result in immediate termination. Do-hyun looked at Yunji. She nodded slowly. They had no choice. The Mugunghwa was a science vessel, not a warship. Even if it had been, 20 against 1 were not good odds. They followed. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. It was vast, dark, and filled with the presence of beings that could end civilizations with a thought. Do-hyun and Yunji stood in the center, feeling very small and very human. Ralmoth spoke first. You are new to this galaxy. You have built ships without permission. You have crossed the void without authorization. This cannot be allowed. Yunji stepped forward. Her voice was calm, professional. We are the human species. We come from a planet called Earth. We seek peaceful contact and mutual understanding. Understanding is irrelevant, Ralmoth replied. The Ascendancy maintains order. You will submit to our rule. You will surrender your technology. You will accept your place as a protected lesser species. These terms are not negotiable. Do-hyun felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his face neutral. And if we refuse? The entire chamber seemed to grow colder. The other council members shifted, their attention focusing on the two humans like the weight of a collapsing star. No one refuses, said the Dralksan War Master, his voice like grinding metal. No one has ever refused. Yunji and Do-hyun looked at each other. They had discussed this possibility during the long journey. They had known it might come to this. The United Terran Assembly had been clear in their instructions. Humanity would not bow to tyrants. Not again, never again. Then I suppose we're the first, Do-hyun said quietly. Our answer is no. The silence that followed was absolute. For perhaps the first time in 10,000 years, the Ascendancy Council was genuinely surprised. Ralmoth's form flared with sudden heat. You do not understand what you are refusing. We have destroyed entire civilizations for less than this insult. We understand perfectly. Yunji replied. You're offering us slavery in exchange for survival. We're not interested. The Kelthran leaned forward, its massive form creating visible distortions in the air. You are 3 billion individuals on a single world. We number in the trillions. Our technology is beyond your comprehension. Your defiance is suicide. Do-hyun straightened his shoulders. Maybe. But it's our choice to make. For a long moment the council simply stared at them. These tiny creatures, barely capable of faster-than-light travel, were refusing the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. It was madness. It was unprecedented. Ralmoth finally spoke, his voice dripping with contempt. Very well. You have one of your solar cycles to reconsider. Return to your homeworld. Discuss this with your leaders. When we come for your answer, it had better be different, because if it is not, we will erase humanity from existence. We will sterilize your planet. We will ensure that no trace of your species ever existed. Do you understand? We understand, Yunji said. Do you understand that we won't change our minds? The council dismissed them with a wave of contempt. Guards escorted them back to their ship. As the Mugunghwa pulled away from the Ascendancy fleet, Do-hyun activated the quantum communicator. This is Commander Do-hyun to Earth Command. First contact established. Species identified as the Ascendancy. They've demanded our complete surrender. He paused. We refused. They've given us 30 days before they come to exterminate us. Sending all data now. Recommend immediate defensive preparations. Back on Earth, President Sumin listened to the message 3 times. She was a calm woman, known for her measured responses to crisis. She had led humanity through economic collapse, environmental disaster, and the near miss of an asteroid impact. But this was different. She called an emergency session of the United Terran Assembly. Representatives from every nation gathered in the Great Hall. The message from Do-hyun played for all of them. When it finished, chaos erupted. Voices shouted over each other, demanding action, defense, surrender, anything. Salman let them argue for exactly 5 minutes. Then she stood. The room fell silent. We knew this was a possibility, she said quietly. When we sent the Mugunghwa into deep space, we knew we might find something hostile. We prepared for this. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every representative. Now we must decide who we are. Do we submit to tyranny to survive, or do we stand for what we believe no matter the cost? The vote was called. It was not even close. 473 in favor of resistance, 27 in favor of submission. Salman authorized the activation of Protocol Sentinel. Deep in classified military facilities around the world, scientists and engineers received their orders. Projects that had been theoretical, experimental, too dangerous to fully test, all of them were now authorized for immediate deployment. Humanity had 30 days to prepare for war against gods. It would have to be enough. The 30 days passed like a held breath. On Earth, construction proceeded day and night. Orbital platforms rose into position around every human colony. Deep space monitoring stations went active. And in secret laboratories, scientists performed final tests on weapons that broke every known law of physics. In the Ascendancy territories, the first enforcement fleet assembled. 50,000 warships gathered in formation, each one capable of reducing a continent to ash. 3 Vormathi energy projectors joined them, beings whose power output exceeded most stars, and commanding them all was Warmaster Thorzen of the Dralksen. Thorzen was a legend among his people. He had personally led the conquest of 47 worlds. His armor had never been breached. His will had never been broken. He looked at the fleet assembled under his command and felt something he rarely experienced: boredom. This would not be a battle. It would be an extermination. The humans would see his fleet and surrender. They always did. Set course for the human colony, he ordered. The one they call New Sol. We will start there. The fleet moved through space like a dark tide. They traveled faster than light, crossing distances that would take human ships months. They arrived at Proxima Centauri in 3 days. New Sol hung in orbit around the red dwarf star, a spinning wheel of metal and glass. 8 million humans called it home. It was humanity's first extrasolar colony, their pride and joy. Thorzen opened a communication channel. This is Warmaster Thorzen of the Ascendancy. You have refused our terms. You will now witness the price of defiance. Surrender immediately or watch your moons turn to dust. Colonel Hyunwoo commanded the colony defense force from the central station. He was a career military officer, 42 years old with gray already showing in his hair. He had spent his entire adult life preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now it was here. He looked at his tactical display. 50,000 ships, and they were just the vanguard. Against them, New Sol had 12 patrol corvettes and some orbital defense platforms. On paper, it was no contest. On paper. War Master Thorzen, Hyunwoo replied, his voice steady. You have entered Terran space without permission. You are threatening civilian populations. Leave now, or we will consider this an act of war. Aboard his flagship, Thorzen actually laughed. The sound resonated through his armor. A deep rumbling that his crew could feel in their bones. You dare threaten me? With what, your tiny ships? Your primitive weapons? He gestured to his communications officer. Activate the Vormathi. Destroy their moons. All 3 of them. Let them understand their situation. The 3 Vormathi projectors moved forward. In their natural state, they were beings of pure energy, consciousness without form. For war, they compressed themselves into physical shapes, spheres of barely contained power that glowed like captive suns. They focused on the first moon. It was a small thing, barely 400 kilometers across. The colony used it for mining operations. 3,000 people worked there. The Vormathi released their attack. Space itself bent around the beam of energy. It was enough power to vaporize a planet twice Earth's size. It crossed the distance in an instant. The moon didn't explode. It didn't even shake. The beam of energy simply vanished like water poured into sand. Nothing, no effect. No result. Thorzen stared at his tactical display in confusion. What happened? Did they miss? No, War Master, his sensor officer replied, her voice uncertain. The energy reached the target. But then it just stopped existing. Energy doesn't stop existing, Thorzen snapped. Check your instruments. Before the officer could respond, proximity alarms screamed across every ship in the fleet. Dozens of objects were powering up around New Sol, stations that had been invisible moments before. They were broadcasting on frequencies the ascendancy sensors had never encountered. Hyunwoo's voice came through the communication channel again, still calm, still professional. That was your demonstration, War Master. Here's ours. The platforms activated fully. They didn't fire weapons. They didn't launch missiles. They emitted a pulsing wave that spread out from New Sol like a ripple in water. It passed through the human ships and stations without effect. But when it touched the Ascendancy fleet, everything changed. Thorzen felt his armor go cold. Dead. The power that had sustained him for 3 centuries simply stopped. His flagship's engines cut out. The lights died. Life support began failing. Around him, he could hear his crew crying out in panic as their systems failed one by one. Across the entire fleet, the same thing was happening. 50,000 warships went dark in the span of seconds. The Vormathi projectors found their energy matrices collapsing. They couldn't maintain their physical forms. They couldn't even think clearly. Everything they were depended on physics that suddenly, impossibly, didn't work anymore. Medical teams launch all rescue shuttles. Hyunwoo ordered. He watched his display as the Ascendancy fleet drifted, helpless. Get everyone out of those ships before their life support fails completely. Move. Thorzen felt his armor being cut open. He tried to fight, but his strength was gone. Without his armor's power systems, he was just flesh and bone. Hands pulled him free, gentle but firm. He found himself looking up at a human face. It was a woman, young, wearing a medical uniform. Her name tag read, Ji-won. She was scanning him with some kind of device, her expression focused and professional. 3 fractured ribs, she muttered. Internal bleeding. Possible concussion. She looked down at him. You're going to be fine, but you need to stop struggling. You're making your injuries worse. What did you do? Thorzen demanded. His voice came out weak, almost a whisper. What kind of weapon was that? Ji-won prepared an injection. It's not a weapon. It's a quantum field generator. We created a localized region of space where the fundamental force constants are different. The physics your technology depends on temporarily doesn't exist. She administered the injection, and Thorzen felt his pain begin to fade. Your ships are built around the assumption that reality works a certain way. We changed reality. Now hold still. Around New Sol, human rescue teams worked frantically. They pulled Ascendancy crew members from dead ships, treated their injuries, provided life support. Not a single enemy soldier was left to die, even though many of them tried to fight their rescuers. Thorzen watched from the medical bay as his entire fleet was systematically disabled and his warriors saved. It made no sense. In every war he had ever fought, the victor destroyed the defeated. That was the way of things. That was the law of the universe. Why are you saving us? He asked Yuan as she finished treating his wounds. She looked at him with something like pity. Because you're people. Because we're not going to let you die if we can help it. Because maybe, just maybe, you'll remember this and ask yourself what kind of empire you've been fighting for. She stood up. You'll be returned to Ascendancy space once you're stable. All of you, tell your council what happened here. The news reached the Ascendancy homeworlds within hours. The first enforcement fleet, defeated without a single human casualty. The method of defeat was even more shocking than the defeat itself. Humans could manipulate the fundamental laws of physics. Ralmoth's energy form blazed with rage when he heard the report. Impossible. No species has that capability. We barely understand such things ourselves. Nevertheless, it happened, the Kelthran representative stated. We must reconsider our approach. Reconsider? Ralmoth's voice could have melted stone. The only thing we must reconsider is the scale of our response. The humans must be destroyed. All of them. Every single one. We will mobilize the Great Armada. That has never been done, another council member protested. Not in 5,000 years. The cost of allowing this to stand is greater. Ralmoth interrupted. If word spreads that humans defeated our fleet, every species we have conquered will rebel. Our entire empire will collapse. No, we must make an example so terrible that no one will ever dare resist us again. The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Totalvar, complete extermination. Humanity would be erased from existence and the Ascendancy would use whatever force necessary to ensure it. The Great Armada began to assemble. 10 million warships, 100 Vormathi dreadnoughts, 1,000 Kelthran gravity platforms, the entire Ithros war mind, billions of drones acting as one, and leading them all would be Supreme Commander Vexithal, a Luminarch who had never lost a battle. Back on Earth, President Soman received the intelligence reports. She read them carefully, her face showing no emotion. Then she called her military council into session. They're coming, she said simply. Everything they have. Every ship. Every weapon. We have approximately 6 weeks before they arrive. Admiral Tejan, commanding the Terran Defense Fleet, studied the projections. We're outnumbered 10,000 to 1. Even with our new weapons, the odds are not good. Then we don't fight their war, said Seohyun, the strategic AI researcher. She pulled up a holographic display. We've been assuming we need to meet them in open battle. We don't. We need to change the rules of engagement entirely. Explain, Soman ordered. Seohyun smiled. It was not a nice smile. They think they're coming to fight a war. We're going to teach them what war really means. The Great Armada moved through space like a storm of metal and fire, 10 million warships traveling in perfect formation, their combined mass creating gravitational distortions that could be detected from light years away. Supreme Commander Vexthal led them from his dimensional fortress, a structure that existed partially outside normal space. He had lived for 12,000 years. He had conquered 73 civilizations. He had seen species rise and fall, watched empires burn and rebuild, and in all that time, he had never encountered a species like humanity. They were too young, too primitive, too weak to have defeated the First Fleet. And yet they had. It made him cautious. That caution had kept him alive for millennia. Send scout probes ahead, he ordered. I want constant surveillance of all human territories. If they have one trick, they likely have more. The probes launched, small automated craft that could observe without being detected. They reported back within hours. Human space was quiet. Too quiet. The colonies were still active, the stations still operational. But their military fleet was nowhere to be found. On Earth, engineer Minho stood in the control center of the Alcubierre chain project. Around him, dozens of screens showed real-time data from across human space. The chain was his design, the culmination of 5 years of theoretical work compressed into 6 weeks of frantic construction. Final node is in position, reported his assistant. All systems are green. Minho allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The chain was a network of connected warp points invisible to conventional sensors. It would allow humanity to move their entire defense fleet instantly across light years of space. It was also the most expensive single project in human history. If this didn't work, they wouldn't get a second chance. Scientist Yuna worked in a different facility, buried deep beneath the surface of Mars. Her project was even more ambitious than Minho's. The quantum lock arrays could freeze entire regions of space-time, creating bubbles where nothing could change, nothing could move, nothing could exist except in a perfect static state. "How long can we maintain the locks?" asked Admiral Tajin during his inspection tour. "Theoretically, indefinitely," Yuna replied. "Practically about 72 hours before we need to cycle the systems. But that should be enough." "Should be?" Yuna met his eyes. "Admiral, we're about to attempt something that every physics textbook says is impossible." "Should be is the best I can offer." Tajin nodded slowly. His flagship, the Taiguchi, was one of only 50 capital ships in the entire Terran defense fleet. Against 10 million enemy vessels, it was a rounding error. Their only chance was to not fight a conventional battle at all. The Ascendancy Armada reached Earth's solar system exactly 43 days after the fall of the First Fleet. They emerged from faster than light. Travel in perfect formation, weapons charged, shields active. They expected defenses, fortifications, a desperate last stand. Instead, they found nothing. Earth hung in space, blue and green and beautiful, completely undefended. No ships, no platforms, no resistance of any kind. The other human colonies were the same, empty, waiting. "It's a trap," Vexthal said immediately. But Ralmoth, watching through a communication link, disagreed. "They've evacuated. They've abandoned their worlds rather than face us. It proves they know they cannot win. Then why not surrender?" Vexthal countered. "Pride. Foolishness. It doesn't matter." Ralmoth's form pulsed with anticipation. Destroy their homeworld. And this. Vexthal hesitated. Every instinct he had developed over 12 millennia was screaming that something was wrong. But he had his orders, and the Council was watching. Vormathi dreadnoughts advanced to firing positions, he commanded. "Target Earth, full power. Leave nothing." The 100 dreadnoughts moved forward. They were the most powerful weapons the Ascendancy had ever built, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust with a single shot. Together they could reduce Earth to its component atoms. They powered up their primary weapons. Energy readings spiked across the electromagnetic spectrum. Space itself began to warp from the sheer power being generated. They fired. 100 beams of pure destruction lanced toward Earth. Enough energy to destroy a dozen worlds. Enough power to sterilize a solar system. The beams struck Earth's atmosphere and stopped. Simply stopped, frozen in place like insects in amber. The planet's surface shimmered, and the human's trap finally revealed itself. Earth was wrapped in a quantum stasis field, a shell of frozen time that nothing could penetrate. The attack didn't bounce off or get absorbed. It just stopped existing the moment it touched the field. "What?" Vexthal began. Then space began to fold. Minho activated the Alcubierre chain from his control center. The nodes he had spent 6 weeks positioning flared to life, creating warp points throughout the Ascendancy fleet. In an instant, reality bent in ways that should have been impossible. The 10 million ships of the Great Armada suddenly found themselves scattered across 1,000 different star systems, cut off from each other, isolated, confused. The perfect formation that had taken weeks to assemble was broken in seconds, and in each system, they were not alone. The machines had been waiting. Humanity had spent decades quietly seeding the galaxy with self-replicating constructors, von Neumann machines that could build copies of themselves from raw materials. They had spread silently, unnoticed across thousands of systems. Now they activated, they didn't attack, they converted. In the Karna system, 50 Ascendancy warships found themselves surrounded by clouds of nanomachines. The machines didn't fire weapons. They simply touched the ship's hulls and began rewriting matter at the molecular level. Weapon systems became inert metal. Power cores became harmless crystals. Armor plating became decorative sculptures. The ship's crews watched in horror as their vessels were transformed around them. Not destroyed, but changed into something harmless. Within minutes, warships became art installations, functional enough to maintain life support but incapable of war. In the Helios system, the Ithros Collective encountered a different trap. The hive mind detected what appeared to be a human data network and instinctively tried to hack it. to overwhelm it with their superior processing power. It was a trap designed by Junho, humanity's leading cyberneticist. The network wasn't a database. It was an AI specifically designed to fight hive minds. It asked questions. If an all-powerful being creates a stone so heavy they cannot lift it, are they still all-powerful? What is the sound of one hand clapping? This statement is false. Logical paradoxes, philosophical conundrums, unsolvable problems. The Ithros Collective couldn't stop processing them. They had to solve every question, resolve every paradox, find every answer. Their hive mind, which had been their greatest strength, became a trap. They became paralyzed, locked in loops of logic that had no resolution. Across 1,000 systems, the same pattern repeated. The Kelthran gravity platforms found their fields inverted, crushing their own ships instead of enemy targets. The Dralxan warriors discovered their armor had been quantum-locked into their own cells, making them statues. The Vormathi dreadnoughts had their energy matrices looped back on themselves, forcing them into dormant states to avoid self-destruction. Vexthal watched from his dimensional fortress as his armada was systematically neutralized, not destroyed. That would have been almost easier to accept. Humanity wasn't killing them. They were making them harmless, stripping away their ability to wage war while leaving them alive. How? He whispered. How is this possible? In the Sol system, Seohyun watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. They fought the war they know. We fought the war we designed. She turned to Admiral Taijin. 6 hours and they're completely neutralized. No casualties on either side. Taijin nodded slowly. And the Ascendancy Council? Watching, waiting, trying to understand what just happened to them. Seohyun pulled up another display. Now comes the hard part. We've proven we can defend ourselves. Now we need to prove we're not monsters. President Soman appeared on every communication channel across the former Ascendancy Armada. Her image was broadcast to every surviving ship, every isolated warrior, every confused consciousness. This is President Soman of the United Terran Assembly, she began. Your armada has been neutralized. You are not harmed, but you are not capable of continuing this war. We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. We could have let you die in the cold of space. Instead, we're sending rescue operations to every system where your forces are stranded. She paused, letting that sink in. We didn't want this war. We won't bow to tyrants, but we take no joy in defeating you. Your leaders offered us slavery or death. We're offering you something different. A choice. Think about what that means. Think about what kind of civilization saves its enemies. The message ended, and in 1,000 systems, human rescue ships began appearing. They brought medical supplies, life support systems, food and water. They treated wounded Ascendancy warriors with the same care they would show their own. They asked for nothing in return. Thorzen, recovered from his injuries and now commanding a disabled battle group in the Terminus system, watched a human medical frigate dock with his flagship. He had spent 3 centuries conquering. He had never been conquered. He had certainly never been saved by an enemy. They're insane, muttered one of his officers. The Ascendancy Council chamber had never been silent before. For 10,000 years, voices had echoed through this space, discussing conquest, ordering executions, declaring absolute authority. Now the 5 great powers sat in stunned quiet. Relmoth broke the silence. His energy form flickered with barely controlled rage. They humiliated us. The entire galaxy watched as our greatest armada was scattered like insects. We must respond. We must show them that the Ascendancy cannot be defeated. We were defeated, the Kelthran representative stated coldly. Pretending otherwise changes nothing. Not defeated. Ralmoth's voice made the chamber walls vibrate. Surprised. Caught off guard. We underestimated them. But we have weapons we haven't used yet. Weapons we swore never to use again. The other council members shifted uncomfortably. They knew what Ralmoth was suggesting. The Stellar Forge. The Luminarch Vexthal said quietly. He had returned from the scattered armada to face the council. You're suggesting we activate the Stellar Forge. Do we have another choice? Ralmoth demanded. The humans have proven they can defend themselves. They have technology we don't understand. But the Forge isn't technology. It's a fundamental weapon. It tears apart the fabric of space itself. Nothing can defend against it. It also kills everything, Vexthal pointed out. Every species in 3 galactic sectors. Trillions of lives. Including many of our own subject races. Subject races who are already starting to rebel. Realmuth flared brighter. I have reports coming in from 40 systems. Species are refusing to obey orders. They're demanding independence. They saw what humanity did to us, and they think they can do the same. If we don't act now with overwhelming force, our entire empire will collapse, the vote was called. It was close. But in the end, fear won. The Stellar Forge would be activated. The Forge existed in a dimension outside normal space. It had been built millions of years ago by a species whose name was now forgotten. The Ascendancy had found it and claimed it, but they had never dared to use it. The weapon worked by creating a chain reaction at the quantum level, igniting a wave that would expand at the speed of light, tearing apart every atom it touched. Vexthal volunteered to arm the device himself. As a Luminarch, he could phase into the dimension where the Forge waited. He didn't trust anyone else with this responsibility. He stepped through reality and found himself in a place where normal physics didn't apply. The Forge hung in the void, a massive structure of crystallized mathematics. It was beautiful in a terrible way. His hands moved over the controls. 72 hours. That's how long it would take for the reaction to become irreversible. 72 hours for humanity to realize what was coming. 72 hours to surrender or die. He activated the Forge and felt reality begin to scream. Captain Soyon commanded the stealth science vessel Narai. Her ship was designed for one purpose: to detect anomalies in space-time. Most of the time, it was boring work, measuring background radiation and gravitational waves. Now her instruments were going crazy. "What am I looking at?" she asked her science officer. The officer stared at his screen, his face pale. A dimensional breach. Something massive just activated in non-Euclidean space. The energy signature is. It's catastrophic. Physicist Jae-hyun was called to the bridge. He reviewed the readings 3 times, checking and rechecking his calculations. When he finally spoke, his voice was shaking. It's a stellar-scale cascade weapon. When the reaction completes, it will create an expanding wave that destroys everything in its path. We have approximately 70 hours before it's irreversible. 72 hours after that, the wave reaches human space. Can we stop it? Soyon asked. I don't know. I'd need to see the device itself to even understand how it works. And it's in a different dimension. Jae-hyun pulled up a map showing the wave's projected path. It won't just kill humanity. 3 entire galactic sectors, hundreds of species, trillions of individuals. Soyon immediately transmitted the data to Earth. The message arrived at the Terran Assembly within minutes. President Somin convened an emergency session. The projection showed the wave's path, the timeline, the death toll. She let everyone absorb the information before speaking. "We can save ourselves," she said quietly. "We can collapse our warp gates, seal off our space. The wave won't reach us for months. We'd have time to evacuate, to survive. But everyone else dies," Admiral Tajan finished. "Every species the Ascendancy conquered. They die because we refuse to submit." The chamber erupted in debate. Some argued that humanity's survival must come first. Others insisted that abandoning trillions to death made humanity no better than the Ascendancy. The argument raged for hours. Finally, Somin called for quiet. "We came to the stars hoping to find other life, other civilizations. We found them. And now we have to decide what kind of neighbor we want to be." She looked around the room. "I know what kind of species I want us to be. The kind that doesn't run when others need help. The kind that stands up to bullies even when it costs everything." The vote was called. It was not unanimous, but the majority agreed. Humanity would attempt to stop the Stellar Forge. The problem was simple. The Forge existed in a dimension that humans couldn't naturally access. Their ships couldn't go there. Their weapons couldn't reach it. They needed someone who could phase between dimensions. They needed a Luminarch. Commander Do-hyun, back from his first contact mission, volunteered to lead a team. With him went Ambassador Yoonji, Colonel Hyunwoo, Dr. Jiwon, Engineer Minho, and Scientist Yuna. They were humanity's best. If anyone could stop the Forge, it was them, but they still needed a way to reach it. Yuna had been working on a theoretical project, dimensional shift suits that could allow humans to phase out of normal space. They were untested. The calculations suggested a 30% chance of catastrophic failure. 30% chance that anyone wearing the suit would simply cease to exist? "I'll take those odds," Do-hyun said. They all did. The suits worked. Barely. The 6 humans phased into the forge dimension and immediately understood why the Luminarchs found it natural. Reality here was fluid, malleable. Thought had weight. Belief had power. The forge rose before them like a mountain of frozen light. And standing before it was Vexithal. The Luminarch turned to face them. In this dimension he appeared as he truly was. A being of pure consciousness spanning kilometers, ancient and powerful beyond human comprehension. "You shouldn't have come." His voice echoed through their minds. "This is for your own good. The galaxy must see that the ascendancy cannot be challenged. If we allow your defiance to stand, chaos will consume everything." Yunji stepped forward. In this strange space, human will had power too. Her form solidified, grew, until she could meet Vexithal's gaze on equal terms. "You're destroying trillions of innocent lives to preserve your authority. How is that different from the chaos you claim to prevent?" "It is order," Vexithal replied. "Harsh but necessary. You cannot understand. You're too young, too naive." "No," Minho said, activating a device on his suit. "We understand perfectly. You're terrified." The device was a quantum broadcaster. It began showing images, broadcasting directly into Vexithal's consciousness, humanity's history, their struggles, their failures and triumphs. The Luminarch watched as humans evolved from simple primates to starfaring civilization. He saw them survive ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters. He saw them fall and rise again, each time learning, adapting, growing. "You developed faster than light travel in 300 years, Yuna explained. "Do you know how long it took the Vormathi?" 50,000 years. The Kelthrans, 100,000. "You've been powerful for so long you forgot what it means to grow." Vexithal felt something crack inside his ancient consciousness. "You're showing me your past, so what?" "It proves nothing." "Then look at this," Jaehyun said, adjusting the broadcaster. Now it showed not history but possibility. Projections of humanity's future, calculated from observed patterns of development. In 1,000 years, humans had reached the Luminarch's level of power. In 10,000 years, they had surpassed it, becoming something the Ascendancy couldn't even conceptualize. "You're not just defending yourselves," Vexithal whispered. "You're evolving. You're becoming something that will make us obsolete." "Yes," Do-Yun agreed, "and that terrifies you. Because you've been at the top for so long, you can't imagine anything above you. You've stopped growing because you thought you'd reach the peak." Yunwoo gestured to the forge. "You can activate that weapon. You can kill us all. But what does that make you? A civilization so afraid of change that you'll commit genocide to prevent it?" "We're not your enemies," Ji-Won added. "We never wanted to fight you. We just wanted to be free. We wanted to grow, to explore, to become something new. Is that really worth destroying the galaxy to prevent?" For the first time in 12,000 years, Vexithal felt doubt. He looked at the 6 humans standing before him, these tiny beings who had somehow crossed dimensions to confront a god. They could have evacuated. They could have saved themselves. Instead, they came here to save everyone, including their enemies. "Why?" he asked. "Why risk everything for species you've never met? Why save the Ascendancy when we tried to exterminate you?" Unji's answer was simple. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because we'd rather die trying to help than live knowing." The quantum broadcaster shut down. The images faded. In the strange dimension where the stellar forge waited, 6 humans and 1 ancient Luminarch stood in silence. Vexithal's form flickered. For 12,000 years, he had been certain of everything. Now, for the first time since he gained consciousness, he felt lost. "What have we become?" he whispered. The question echoed through the dimensional space. Do-Hyun and his team said nothing. This was something Vexithal needed to answer for himself. They phased back into normal space together. The human team returned to their ship. Vexithal returned to the Ascendancy Council. He told them what had happened. He told them he had deactivated the forge. Ralmoth's rage was incandescent. "You failed. You betrayed us. You betrayed everything we are." "No," Vexithal said quietly. "I saved us. Because if we had activated that weapon, we would have proven the humans right. We would have shown the galaxy that the Ascendancy is nothing but tyranny backed by the threat of genocide. And now they know we're weak." Ralmoth screamed, "No. Now they know we can choose differently." Vexithal looked at each council member. The humans risked everything to stop us from committing mass murder. They saved us from ourselves. What does it say about us that our enemies have more compassion than we do? The other council members were silent. They had no answer. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The Stellar Forge had been activated, and then deactivated. The Ascendancy had stood at the brink of ultimate genocide and stepped back. For the conquered species, it was the final proof they needed. The gods could change their minds. The gods could be reasoned with. The gods could be wrong. The rebellion started small. A colony refusing to pay tribute. A subject world closing its borders. A species politely but firmly asking the Ascendancy to leave. The Vormathi tried to reassert control. They arrived at a rebellious world with their energy projectors ready. They demanded submission. The world's defenders activated Terran-designed dampening fields. The Vormathi's power simply faded away. No violence. No destruction. The energy beings found themselves helpless. Their greatest weapon neutralized by technology humanity had shared freely. The Kelthrans attempted to use gravity bombardment. They found their targets protected by quantum locks. The same technology that had shielded Earth. Again, shared freely by human scientists who asked for nothing in return. Planet after planet, system after system, species after species peacefully separated from the Ascendancy. There was no great war, no bloody revolution, just a quiet, steady dissolution of an empire that had lasted 10,000 years. Within 6 months, the Ascendancy Council governed only their own homeworlds. Everything else was gone. Ralmoth came to Earth as a supplicant, not a conqueror. He requested an audience with President Soman. She granted it, though her advisors warned against it. They met in a simple conference room, not the grand halls Ralmoth was accustomed to. The Vormathi's energy form was dimmed, almost subdued. "You destroyed us," he said simply. Soman shook her head. She was older now, tired from months of negotiation and reconstruction. "No, you destroyed yourselves. You built an empire on fear and power. When that power was challenged, the empire collapsed. We just showed everyone that you could be challenged. What happens now?" Ralmoth asked. "What happens to us?" "Whatever you want," Samin replied. "You're free. Just like everyone else. You can rebuild, find a new purpose, discover what it means to be part of a community instead of ruling over one. Or you can try to reclaim your empire and face the same resistance that defeated you before. The choice is yours." Ralmoth considered this. Choice. He had spent 10,000 years making choices for others. He had forgotten what it felt like to choose for himself. The galaxy reorganized itself. The Galactic Concordance formed. A true alliance of equals. Every species had a voice. Every world had representation. Humanity helped draft the charter but refused to take a leadership position. "We're new here," Ambassador Yunji explained during the founding session. "We have ideas to share, but we have more to learn. Let's build this together." Engineer Minho taught dimensional physics at universities across the Concordance. Species that had spent millennia trying to understand faster-than-light travel learned from human experts who treated knowledge as something to be shared, not hoarded. Dr. Jiwan established the first multi-species medical exchange program. She trained physicians from dozens of worlds in techniques that had been Ascendancy secrets. "Medicine should serve everyone," she said. "Healing has no borders." The former Ascendancy species struggled with their new reality. For the Vormathi, existence without dominance felt empty. For the Kelthrans, cooperation instead of conquest was unfamiliar. The Ithros collective fractured into thousands of smaller minds, learning to think as individuals instead of a hive. The Dralksan warriors had perhaps the hardest transition. Warmaster Thorzen found himself working with Colonel Hyunwoo to establish the Concordance Defense Force. Not an army of conquest, but a protection force that served all members equally. "I still don't understand you," Thorzen admitted one day as they reviewed patrol routes. "You defeated me, humiliated me. Why would you trust me with protecting your worlds?" Hyunwoo looked at him. "Because you're not the enemy anymore. Because people can change. Because I'd rather have you as an ally than an enemy." He paused. "And because you chose to learn instead of remaining bitter. That takes more courage than any battle." The Luminarchs faced their own transformation. Vextal made an unprecedented decision. He would remain in normal space, limiting his power, to learn what humanity had mastered. He enrolled as a student at a human university. His instructor was Professor Seo-hyun, who taught philosophy and ethics. She treated him exactly like any other student, expecting him to complete assignments and defend his arguments. Why do you help us? Vexthal asked after a particularly challenging discussion on moral responsibility. My people tried to exterminate yours. I personally commanded the armada that came to destroy Earth. Why would you teach me? Seohyun smiled gently. Because you didn't. When it mattered most, when you stood before the Stellar Forge, you chose differently. That's what we do. We give people the chance to be better than they were, including ourselves. 1 year after the fall of the Ascendancy, the Concordance held its first General Assembly. Representatives from 300 species gathered on a neutral station. The agenda included trade agreements, resource sharing, scientific cooperation, and dispute resolution. Admiral Tajin addressed the assembly as the current chair. We stand at a unique moment in galactic history. For the first time, we are not ruled by the strongest. We are guided by cooperation. This won't always be easy. We will disagree. We will argue. But we will do it as equals, as partners, as neighbors. He looked around the hall, seeing species that had once been enemies now sitting together. The Ascendancy believed that power meant control. They were wrong. True power is the ability to lift others up, to share knowledge, to defend the weak, to choose compassion even when it costs us. The Assembly ratified the First Concordance Treaty. It included provisions for free movement, shared technology, mutual defense, and protection for all species regardless of size or strength. Humanity had not sought to lead. They had no desire to replace the Ascendancy as the dominant power. But their actions had set an example that rippled across the galaxy. President Soman, retiring after her term ended, gave her final address to the Terran Assembly. We came to the stars afraid we were alone. We found we weren't. We encountered tyranny and we fought it not with greater tyranny but with the principles we believed in. We won not because we were stronger, but because we were willing to be different. She looked out at the faces of humanity's representatives. Remember this always. Power corrupts when it's held by those who believe they deserve it. Stay humble. Stay curious. Stay willing to learn from everyone we meet. The moment we think we're the most advanced, the most enlightened, the most powerful, that's when we'll have lost everything that makes us human. 100 years passed. Captain Jisoo, granddaughter of Commander Doyun, commanded the Concordance exploration vessel Hanbit. Her crew was mixed species, humans working alongside Dralxan engineers, Kelthran navigators, even a Vormati energy specialist. They pushed beyond the known galaxy, exploring regions that no one had mapped. The ship's AI detected a signal from deep space, a new civilization broadcasting mathematical greetings. First contact protocol, Jisoo ordered. Her heart raced with excitement and nervousness. She had read her grandfather's journals, knew about his encounter with the Ascendancy. She wondered what lessons that history could teach her now. The alien ship appeared on their sensors. It was massive, clearly powerful. Jisoo opened a communication channel. This is the Concordance ship Hanbit. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship. We have much to learn from each other. The alien response came quickly. They spoke of their empire, their conquests, their dominance. They offered the Hanbit a choice, submit or be destroyed. Jisoo felt a chill. History repeating itself, another Ascendancy in a different part of the universe. Behind her, Vexthal served as cultural liaison. He was over 12,000 years old now, but still learning, still growing.